Welcome to the Starting a Counseling Practice podcast, where we share wonderful success stories and the information you need to create a counseling practice that you absolutely love, that leaves you happy, and that keeps you out of trouble. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the things that gets therapists into trouble with the amazing Barbara Griswold from Navigating the Insurance Maze. She has come on before. She's provided trainings with us before. And we're going to be talking today about treatment plans, which I know you want to just skip over this podcast episode. You want to go to the next thing because you don't do treatment plans. It's not a thing. Listen to this. It's really important. 10 minutes can make a huge difference in you getting paid and in your clients' lives. So stay with me. All right, Barbara, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. Okay, so I'm gonna start by self-disclosing this piece. When I went through school, I remember them talking vaguely about treatment plans, sort of, kind of, goals versus objectives. I think we had to write some things up in our counseling program. And then when I got into my actual practicum placements, it was a whole different experience. And I kind of had this experience where I would write up these treatment plans. We would spend a whole session creating this treatment plan in the way that I was described, right?
And you ignore it, right?
And then the client would be like, I don't want to do that. And you're like, okay, do I go back to the treatment plan or what do I do? And so as a client-centered therapist who I was working with people that were in trauma, that were in crisis, and here's life happening. So it was always this tension between what is the client needing and then this process. And so then even as I went into private practice and I came up with my process, it was more about the way that I wrote it up was within the documentation, kind of as part of the notes, but not as a separate standing document. And so it's just been this, I would never, if somebody was like, hey, teach me how to do a treatment plan, I would be like, I'm not your girl. I don't think, I know what I did.
I'd rather do that.
I could teach you so many things clinically. I could teach you so many things business-wide. But if somebody said, Miranda, teach me how to do a treatment plan, I'd be like, no, I wouldn't trust me.
But see, what you're saying is the same thing that's happened is through our graduate education and even afterwards, we were always taught all this clinical stuff. And it was always at the mercy of, or the sacrificing, that we weren't taught all this practical things that need to happen to either sustain our practice or to work with insurance or to do the financial side. So often, people will have there aren't many selections out there of training in the practical side of building up the business side of the practice and things like documentation. This is the stuff that isn't sexy. It's not fun. We would rather go into an EMDR conference or something and learn a new clinical skill. That sounds cool.
Yes.
That appeals to us. But I hope that you will take advantage, everyone listening to these kind of trainings that Zanimi is offering in terms of, hey, we need to learn some practical skills, not only to keep our doors open, but to protect ourselves, learn documentation. These things, if we can learn how to do them quickly and efficiently, can really, really help you not only provide better services, but to cover you legally, ethically, against yourself in a complaint. And we'll talk more about this, with insurance plans, to make sure you hold on to every dollar that you deserve and don't have to give any back because your documentation isn't good enough.
I think there's also this other place too. And whether it's fear, you mentioned several things, if there's ever complaint at the board, if insurance companies ever deny you payment, or insurance companies come back and ask for payment back that they've already given you, or, all of these places. I think all of those things, when we're unsure of our documentation, right, which includes our treatment plans, then we're carrying this kind of fear and anxiety.
Yes.
We're carrying, it's kind of almost like, even when you're driving down the road, you're on the freeway, you're going the speed limit, and then you see a law enforcement officer and you're like, wait, do I have everything
Yeah.
together? Like, and you check, am I going the right speed limit? Is my registration sticker on? Like, you kind of go through this middle checklist and you're like, okay, I'm good. And you settle yourself, right? But I think in many cases, we kind of think about this, or we hear stories and we go, you kind of go through the middle checklist. You're like, I have no clue if I'm good. I'm pretty sure I'm not. I'm just really hoping that nobody ever looks at my stuff.
Exactly. And that's not something we want to be carrying around. I hope no one ever looks at my charts. That if you are saying that to yourself, which most of us are, unfortunately, that is not a place you want to be living, number one. And I have to say, it just breaks my heart every day. I get phone calls from people saying, oh my gosh, I got an audit request from an insurance plan or something, and I haven't done notes. I have missing notes. They're very superficial. I know my notes won't pass muster. They're terrified. The level of panic in these therapists just kills me. And so I hope that you guys will be proactive and say, I want my notes to be in a place, and my documentation, including treatment plans, to be in a place where if I got that phone call or if I got that request, I'm just like, yeah, this sucks, but I'm totally comfortable, right?
Yeah.
I know.
I've been going the speed limit. I can do my
exactly.
checklist.
Have at it. Take my file. I don't care. I have nothing to lose because I feel really comfortable with that. So that's where we want to get everyone to that place.
I think that's the other part too, is, insurance companies are, for the most part, for-profit institutions, right? It's kind of this different space, and we can think of them in lots of different ways, but they're looking to make a profit. That's what matters. There are people who, invest. They have investors. They have other people where there's like, here's what the return. This is how many billions of dollars. The insurance companies collectively in the United States made more money than Amazon in 2020 during a global pandemic, right?
But I want to be sure that people are getting that. A lot of people are like, I don't need to know about treatment plans or documentation because I don't work with insurance. And that is such a myth. Number one, almost all of us have some clients who are submitting a super bill to their insurance. As soon as your client submits a super bill or a statement, whatever you want to call it, to their insurance, that insurance plan has the right, many people don't know this, to ask for your notes, your treatment plans. They could call you up and do a clinical review. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of question about whether we have the right to refuse that. Well, if your client says, no, I want you to do this, basically that's their medical chart. You don't get to say no. That's really up to them to release or not to release. So you are the custodian of their medical chart. And if your chart sucks and that client doesn't get paid or reimbursed because of you, this is an ugly situation that you don't want to have. So we all need to be keeping our notes in an excellent condition, no matter how our clients are paying. And I think that's something.
I think people don't realize too, and not most clients will just say, oh, that sucks. Insurance companies suck. But there's going to be a certain amount of clients who'll say, hey, wait, the insurance company is saying that you didn't provide me good treatment. Now I'm going to come back and either ask for my money back, or I'm going to make a board complaint saying, hey, you don't know how to do your job, because this should be really clear that I was in need of these services. But I went and looked at my records and they were incomplete. This doesn't seem like a professional did this.
Well, and I've had ones that had nothing to do with insurance, where the client filed a complaint and the board asked for the, notes, and this therapist asked for my help in kind of fighting this complaint. Her license actually got taken away because her notes were not there to support that she had provided quality of care.
Yeah.
Her notes were too superficial. They didn't defend that she had handled a very difficult, client in a certain way, or done this or done that, or what the client had said. And, so all of these things, your licensing board, if you forget the insurance plans, your licensing board will expect you to have a treatment plan. So if going back to treatment plans.
And I think it's interesting too, because I could just imagine there's also therapists out there be like, this is why I just want to go into coaching or whatever, like we want to run from these conversations. We want to run from the hard things. And I think it's so important that we sit and breathe into why this feels hard, because even if you were a coach, there's no licensing board, but people can still take you to court and say you didn't do the things that you said you do in your contract. And they would go and look at your documentation to see if you did it. Like, this is not specific to it. Like, the way we're talking about is kind of specific to therapy. But when you take away this and you move into something else, there's still a standard of care no matter what kind of service you're providing.
Right. And I think we get very nervous, like it seems so overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I feel like in my webinars, I'm able to help people make this not feel so overwhelming. There is a structure. You can do it quickly. You can figure out how to sum up a 50-minute session quickly in a progress note. And once you kind of get the hang of it, again, it can just be the part of your job that you don't have to love it. But, there's going to be parts of your job that you love, hopefully working with clients. Yeah. And this is the less happy part of your job, but that you do it and you get it done quickly and you check that checkbox, and it doesn't have to be so stressful. That's the point. And one of the things we're going to be doing at our Zynnyme webinar is talking about how to dash off those treatment plans, get them done. You don't have to love them. You don't even have to believe in them. I've done surveys about, most of us don't find them helpful, don't think that we have time for them. What is
it? Like you said, like when you surveyed therapists, how many of them just straight up said they do not do treatment plans?
Only 37% said that they do that for all clients.
So 63% of therapists were like, yeah, that's not standard practice for me. I'm not doing it. Everyone,
some of them said they were doing it for some clients, but 37% only saying for all my clients, I take it. I do this. So if you don't do this for everybody, don't feel ashamed. You are in the majority. I certainly never did it throughout my practice for all my clients. And, I'm not going to actually convey how few of them I did it for. But what's happened is since I started 32 years ago, they have become more and more and more important by insurance plans. Insurance plans are requesting them more often. Licensing boards are looking for them more often. So they become, unfortunately, more asked for. I don't want to say they're more important. To me, I think of them as very low priority in terms of what's in them. But I know how to dash them out really quickly. And that's what I want to teach you guys is how to dash them out quickly, but they're going to meet the insurance plan's requirements. There's common mistakes that people make that we'll be talking about that get your treatment plans to blow up everything for you and could even lead to an insurance clawback because everything else could be great. Your progress notes could be great and your treatment plans suck. And if that could be enough to them say, hey, we don't think that your treatment plans were good enough and we want to ask for money back or we won't pay for these sessions.
Which is so frustrating because insurance companies, and not in every state, but around the country sometimes some of them are reimbursing at like already kind of poverty levels. Like it's really hard.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're in LA, you're being reimbursed at a poverty level. Like you have 3 roommates in a 2-bedroom house.
Right.
Like you're struggling if you're in LA doing reimbursement. And then somebody says, oh, and by the way, your paycheck for the last 3 months, I need you to give it back. And you're like, there's nothing to give back. Or, hey, your paycheck for the next 3 months, we're not going to pay you.
I don't want
to be keeping that back.
Oh, that there's, especially online on Facebook, and I hate to, if you were to go into one of these Facebook groups of therapists, it seems like clawbacks when the insurance company asks for money back. It seems like they happen every day to every person, which they don't. They're enormously rare, but they happen. And, my job is to help you get to a place where you don't care if they ask for your notes and you're bulletproofed against these if they happen. But, you want to just be scared enough so that you're motivated to do good notes.
Yeah.
But you don't want to get overwhelmed so that you go, oh, I can't work with insurance. I'm so frightened about what to write in my note that I don't write them. So sometimes we go to the opposite direction of being so frightened that we say, I'm going to become a coach, like you said. And again,
let me go work at Starbucks. I'll get better benefits.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot. People are getting very stressed out about working with insurance or just doing their documentation. I hear more and more people saying I'm really behind. But let's talk about this part. Like, I know we're going to dive into all the details in the free training on September 1st.
You can go check it out at zaytome.com, y'all. It's going to come with templates, and we're going to be diving in. There'll be some time for Q&A. If you haven't been to a training with Barbara before, her trainings are amazing. She really, truly like takes these complex things and just simplifies them down. It's real world. She's someone who's in practice, seeing clients and doing this and helping therapists through all of these dynamics. I feel like
let me say a word about the templates too. This training I gave out probably the most cool templates, because I'm going to give you a blank treatment plan template where then I'm going to show you it filled out for someone who has anxiety, and I'm going to show you it for someone who has depression, and you get to take those home as handouts so that you can use them in your practice the next day. We all know that anxiety and depression are probably the most common things we see. So you could practically copy these guys. Like maybe you change a few words. Of course, you make it client-centered, but this is going to make your job much faster when you go to write them. You can just even use the templates yourself, use them digitally, use them by hand, whatever way you want to. So then I have a couple other handouts I might give besides the slide handout. So for that price alone, for that alone, you should attend.
And we know like it's a free training, but we know that your time is really valuable. We know that this is one of those things where you're like, I don't know about the rest of you, but for the last couple of years, I felt like I can't take on one more thing. Like I'm just kind of getting by and I'm doing my best. But, take an hour out, show you how to do these treatment plans in 10 minutes. I think that's the other thing too. I know it made a big difference when I was really working on my documentation and I started creating different templates for myself, not to copy and paste every documentation piece of it, but for the things that were like, oh, we reviewed A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because I had a whole script basically for the first session. The fact that I didn't have to retype that every time then allowed me to personalize the rest of it. Right. And so I think that idea too of like, hey, if you're working with trauma all the time, to have a basic treatment plan for trauma and to be able to then personalize it for the person. If you're dealing with behavioral disturbances with kids, to have a basic treatment plan for that, and then to be able to customize it versus feeling like you're starting from scratch every time.
We should probably define what a treatment plan is.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Because not everybody knows that, and it's fine because most of us didn't get training and sometimes we confuse it with what's a progress note and what's a treatment plan and how is that. So when we're talking about treatment plans, what I'm talking about is that it's like an overall map of where you intend to go in therapy. So it's usually devised after the first session. You've met with a client, you've talked to them for 50 or 60 minutes, whatever. And maybe you do it a little bit later, but usually it's after the first session. You're going to get a very tentative idea of what that client wants to work on, what you think they need to work on, what your diagnosis is, and where you think you're probably going to be going in terms of your interventions. Very rough. Now, the way that I liken it is, it's like if you're in California and you know you're going to drive, you sit down and you talk to somebody and they say, I want to end up in New York City. Okay, we got a goal here. Now you kind of map out, I think on the way we'll stop here and here and here, and maybe we'll take Route 66. And that's my attempt to approach this trip that we're going to take. Now, will that change along the way as you get more information? Yes. So it's okay that it's fluid. It's okay. You're not locked into the diagnosis. You're not locked into Route 66 because maybe you're traveling along the way and you realize, oh, Route 66 blocked. Okay, we're going to take a different. So it's okay to be fluid and don't think of it as you're locked into these things. You can add goals. You can subtract goals. You can achieve goals along the way. And your diagnosis may change. But you need to have something at the start of treatment to say, hey, okay, we are agreeing to go on this trip together and that we have kind of an idea of where we're traveling and where we want to go, and that you've tuned in enough to the client's goals. So, yes.
I think that piece that you've tuned, I think this is the other place. It can be an area for attunement.
It can be.
There's a lot of therapists that I have said, hey, tell me about, like, what do your clients say? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, go back and look, what did they say it looked like? And then to be able to check in from an out, because we've done these trainings on outcomes conversations, and people often don't go back to, hey, when you came in,
Yes.
you said you wanted this.
Yeah.
It's been 3 months. How are we doing?
We are going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about, I don't remember what the other thing I was going to say, but yeah, definitely checking in on their goals is really important. And getting some, we'll talk about the positives of treatment plans, even though I, poo-poo them. Getting a client kind of buy-in, it can build rapport. It can build a sense of accomplishment. It can build a sense of that you guys are together working on something. And sometimes I've added goals that the client did not come in with. I've had clients come in with and say, I'll ask them how they're sleeping, and they'll say, oh, I don't sleep. I've been doing that all my life, 4 hours of sleep, but that's not normal for me. And I'll be like, how would you feel about adding, sleeping to our goal list here? Because I think that might be affecting your overall mood, that you are getting 4 hours of sleep a night. So, you being able to add some things and maybe make some interventions around sleeping could really, so it's a kind of a thing you build together, I think, and it can be really positive.
I think this is the other part too. I think of myself personally when I've talked with people, friends, right, that are not therapists, just regular people who are in therapy. How often do I hear from that person saying, I think therapy is helping, but I don't really understand why, and I'm not sure where we're going. Like, it's not really clear. And of course, my response is always like, hey, talk to them, ask them. Say, hey, I'm not sure where this is going. This is how I'm feeling. This is super normal. It's super normal to feel that way.
Absolutely.
Normal these things, but also like you should feel good about having these conversations. I think there is something beautiful about a treatment plan sitting there so that you do like check in on it and say, hey, we talked about this. Is this still, here's the place.
And clients don't always see their progress. Sometimes I say, okay, it's been 6 months or whatever. Let's go back to what you said the first day. Are you still experiencing that? I don't even remember feeling that way. Or, wow, I really have made a lot of progress in that area. And it's suddenly you see them sitting higher in the chair and they're like proud of themselves. Or you reflect back to them, I've seen you be much more assertive in this way with that person and this way. And they're like, that's true. So sometimes just doing a little check-in with the initial goals can be a super...
So powerful,
especially if they're at a plateau in therapy.
I think anytime. I think I'm willing to stand on this. Every therapist should be doing this every 3 months with every client, period, end of story. And it's not that and therapists will say, oh, I don't want to use up their session for this. No. I pinky promise.
They
love those sessions. Like they absolutely love them.
They love being asked.
Therapists.
Typically, they love being asked. And if you're really open to it, if you ask things like, is there anything that I could be doing differently to, do you think that what is the thing that I'm giving you that you're liking the most? Is there other things that I'm not giving you that you might want more of or less of?
Yes.
What are the things you're liking the least that I'm giving you? Being able for them to be bold enough to say, well, I kind of wish you would assign me more books to read, or I kind of don't like that you give me homework because I just want to come in here and talk. Oh, cool. Like, thank you so much for telling me that, or that really helps me get to know what you need from me. It's just a really moment.
Well, and what is it doing? It's giving them the skills that we're trying to get them to use outside,
exactly.
Which is to have these conversations, right? They're coming in and saying, read this text chain and tell me what to do with this person.
Yeah.
And like, what would it look like for you to ask for what you need, to tell them what you're not, to set some boundaries, to be curious, to be loving? What would that look like? So there's so much that happens in terms of we're actually like giving them this reparative experience and giving them a template that they can use with their kids and their boss and their partners and all these things. So it's such good stuff, y'all. So we're going to be digging into this. I don't want to go because I know we can't do it. I mean, you guys are going to want to do the slides and the templates and all those pieces. I would love, for those of you who are listening to the podcast today, we would love to hear your stories about treatment plans. Like, share it. You can go and comment on where we do the little blog post or what have you at ZinnyMe. but come and bring your treatment plan questions, bring your horror stories, bring your success stories, bring your stuff, and let's dig in and let's make sure that this is easier, that we're all protected. And I know you said, Barbara, like this isn't just about insurance companies, and it's not, but I don't want any great therapist to get any amount of money clawed back from another insurance company ever again. Like, I don't think it's great. I don't want any therapist who's a good therapist to be fearful of what's happening with a board complaint. I want us all to be sitting in confidence, knowing that we know how to do our job. We're deeply connected with clients. Our documentation is on play, and then we can just like take that weight off of our shoulders.
Yes. And I'm going to talk. I'm going to be talking about something. Here's a little. What do we call it?
Teaser.
Little teaser. I'm going to be talking about the 3 reasons why your treatment plan could lead to trouble. So
let's give one of them, so they don't feel like if they're like listening, like what's one quick one of which we'll dig into more during the place.
The number one reason that I would say is that the treatment plan goals are not what they would call medically necessary, which we're going to talk a lot more. Basically, they're either personal growth oriented, but not really addressing the diagnosis or the symptoms. And I'll give some examples. Or they're just, I've seen ones that are like goal, build rapport with client, create safe place for client. That's not a goal for where are we driving, right? I'm not telling them our intention is to drive to New York. That's like, oh, the car has air conditioning. They don't want to know that what your conditions are, therapy that you're going to create. That's assumed. So we don't want create safe space. We don't want build rapport. So that's those type. We also don't want, and this is the one that kills us because we say it all the time, build client will have higher self-esteem. We don't want things that are insurance plans don't cover higher self-esteem. No, it needs to be, or client will have more meaning in their life. First of all, these things are not measurable, it would be hard to measure. Let's put it that way. So they want ones that are measurable, but they also want ones that are just not about personal growth. Or a client will be able to talk to husband better. Probably wouldn't like that one as your main goals. They want to see things like client will be less depressed. Client will be less anxious. So I'm going to teach you to go right to the diagnosis, and then in some ways, your treatment plan is going to write itself, because if this is their diagnosis, then this is their first goal, is to reduce that. The other one, so certain ones are this is going to be easier than you think, probably. If client's main symptom is insomnia, goal number 1 is to reduce insomnia. Not like, definitely we're going to avoid things like help client explore feelings. We're going to work through clients.
And maybe the client says like, hey, I'm having this existential crisis. These 3 people just died in my life. I don't know what life it means to me anymore. And it just, and what's it doing? It's keeping me up at night. Cool, you have insomnia. Let's talk about that. And maybe what needs to happen for you to be able to sleep at night is to work through these existential crises. But ultimately,
that doesn't go on the treatment plan.
That doesn't go on the treatment plan.
There's what we're working on, and then there's the treatment plan, which is what are the symptoms that I'm trying to help this client reduce. And grief, it's okay to talk about that. You're going to help them process grief in some manner, and that certain symptoms of grief are going to be. So that's fine. That's medically necessary enough. But we don't want to keep it not so vague and not so just personal growth oriented, or just, I want to learn about my mom and whether she really loved me or not. That's great. But again, if you're working with insurance, they ain't going to cover that. So,
well, and if there's a possibility that someone is going to send this information off for whatever, like, is that going to work with the board? Right? We want to make sure that place. And even if it's, hey, you know what? I'm not working with insurance. What does it mean to have a V code, right? To have a relational
Z code. They're Z codes now.
Oh, geez, Louise. I'm so old, Barbara. I'm like, my brain is still like so in there.
Z codes are like parent-child problem or
Yes.
partner problems with your significant
To
other.
be able to say, hey, here's a Z code and here's what their gaff is, or what do they have a different gaff now?
They don't have gaffs anymore.
They don't have gaffs. What do they have? What's the new thing?
They
Nothing.
don't.
There's no assessment of functioning.
No, you can use other things, but there's not one that's built in.
Oh, there's not a built-in one or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, hey, here's the Z code. Here's where the person, their level of functioning is. They're really struggling. They're not getting to work. They've taken 10 days off in the last 3 months. They're out of sick time. You know, like, let's give them some specifics on there, even if we don't say it's not depression or whatever. But give them something, and then let's dig in and be clear. Yay. Well, I'm so excited. So check it out. And if you have not gone to Barbara's website and gotten on her email address or her email newsletter, like, honestly, she has, like, there's 2 newsletters. I'm like, these are ones to read. Hers is one. Actually, I like Person-Centered Tech too. And then I like Melvin Varghese. Right. And I'm not saying there's not other great newsletters, but like, these are probably my top 3 that I look at after, 20 years of all of this stuff that
Can I name my website?
Yes.
Oh.
The whole domain.
It's theinsurancemaze.com. So don't forget the word the or the insurancemaze.com.
Yes. So go and get on her email newsletter. It is absolutely worth it. If there are any trainings that you see that you're like, is this worth going to the training? If it's with Barbara, it is worth going to that training. Period, end of story. And
just go to my store page and you'll see all my trainings. And
she does amazing things. And again, like, you're one of our highest rated speakers that we've ever brought in. Like, people just adore you because you give them real information and help them go, okay, it doesn't have to be scary. I can figure this out. It's going to be okay. And
I've been there. After 32 years doing therapy, I've made every mistake that you guys have, or actually many, many more probably than most of you have. So it's just really nice to be able to turn around and try to help you keep from making those mistakes. So that's my goal.
I love it. All right. Until next time, y'all, just remember that you are needed. You are loved, you are special, you are the person that is meant to be doing the work that you're doing. And whatever you need to be able to do that with just ease and grace, there's support out there for you. Okay. You are needed. You're needed. You're needed. And see you at the training, y'all.
Bye.